In a small, humble cottage nestled at the edge of a dense forest, there lived a poor woodcutter and his wife. Their life was simple and filled with hard work, but they found joy in the little things. Each day, the woodcutter would venture into the forest to chop wood, while his wife tended to their tiny garden and kept the house in order. Despite their poverty, they shared a bond of love and contentment. One brisk morning, the woodcutter woke up before dawn. He stretched his weary limbs and prepared for another long day of labor. "Wife," he said gently, "please bake me 2 corn cakes to take with me to the forest. They will keep my strength up, and I won't have to come back home to eat." His wife nodded, her eyes filled with concern. She knew how hard her husband worked and wanted to make sure he had enough to eat. She mixed the cornmeal, water, and a pinch of salt, then placed the cakes on the griddle. As the aroma of freshly baked corn cakes filled their small kitchen, the woodcutter packed his bag with tools and kissed his wife goodbye. With the sun rising behind him, he walked into the forest, the bag of corn cakes slung over his shoulder. The tall trees whispered in the morning breeze, and the birds sang their cheerful songs. It was in this peaceful setting that Pinko, a mischievous and crafty boy, made his home. Pinko was the son of old Peludo, a reclusive figure who lived deep within the forest. Unlike his father, Pinko had a knack for getting into trouble and causing mischief. That day, Pinko had been up to his usual tricks, sneaking around the forest and spying on the woodcutter from a distance. He watched as the woodcutter set down his bag and began chopping wood, the rhythmic sound echoing through the trees. Curiosity piqued, Pinko crept closer, his eyes gleaming with mischief. He waited until the woodcutter was engrossed in his work, then made his move. With nimble fingers, Pinko untied the bag and peered inside. His mouth watered at the sight of the golden corn cakes. Without a second thought, he snatched them up and devoured them quickly, crumbs spilling from his lips. Satisfied and with a full belly, he darted back into the shadows, leaving the empty bag behind. Hours passed, and the woodcutter, feeling the pangs of hunger, paused to take a break. He reached for his bag, only to find it disturbingly light. Puzzled, he opened it and discovered the corn cakes were gone. Bewildered and disappointed, he sighed deeply. "What am I to do?" he muttered to himself. "Those cakes were supposed to sustain me." As he stood there, lamenting his misfortune, a figure emerged from the underbrush. It was Pinko, looking sheepish and guilty. "Sir," Pinko began hesitantly, "I am the one who ate your corn cakes. I was hungry and could not resist." The woodcutter stared at the boy, his anger quickly melting into a mixture of pity and understanding. "You should not have done that, boy," he said gently. "But I can see that you are truly sorry. What is done is done." Pinko's head hung low, and his cheeks flushed with shame. "My father has punished me," he confessed. "He told me that I must work for you for 3 years to repay what I have taken." The woodcutter was taken aback by this declaration. "There is no need for such harshness, child. I could never afford to pay you." But Pinko insisted, his eyes pleading. "Please, let me help you. I am strong and capable, and I want to make things right." Moved by the boy's earnestness, the woodcutter agreed. "Very well, you may stay and help me, but only if you promise to work hard and learn from your mistakes." From that day on, Pinko became a part of the woodcutter's life. True to his word, he worked diligently, his mischievous nature tempered by the lessons he learned from the woodcutter. Each morning, they ventured into the forest together, Pinko's youthful energy complementing the woodcutter's experience and wisdom. The boy quickly proved his worth, displaying a surprising strength for his age. He would pluck trees from the ground with ease and stack the logs neatly, impressing the woodcutter with his dedication and skill. As the months turned into years, Pinko and the woodcutter developed a bond akin to that of a father and son. The woodcutter's wife, too, grew fond of the boy, treating him with kindness and care. Despite their initial hardship, the little family found a new rhythm, one that brought unexpected joy and fulfillment to their humble lives. One evening, as they sat by the fire, the woodcutter spoke to Pinko. "You have more than repaid your debt, Pinko. You have become a part of our family, and we are grateful for your help." Pinko smiled, his heart swelling with gratitude. "Thank you for giving me a chance. I have learned so much and I am forever in your debt." Their lives, though still simple, were now richer in many ways. The woodcutter, his wife, and Pinko shared their burdens and joys, each day weaving their stories together. The boy who once stole corn cakes had grown into a young man, his mischief replaced by a sense of responsibility and love for those who had shown him kindness. And so, in the heart of the forest, under the watchful eyes of the towering trees, they continued their humble journey, finding happiness in the bond they had formed. On a crisp, golden morning in the dense forest, the poor woodcutter was just about to take his first swing of the axe when Pinko, the mischievous boy who had stolen his corn cakes, appeared with a somber look on his face. He was accompanied by his father, old Peluto, who wore an expression of stern determination. "Sir," old Peluto began, his voice gruff but steady, "I have come to set things right. My son has wronged you by taking your food. As punishment, I am sending him to serve you for 3 years. He will work hard and make amends for his actions." The woodcutter, taken aback by the severity of the punishment, looked from the father to the son. Pinko's eyes were downcast, filled with a mixture of regret and resolve. Despite his mischievous nature, it was clear that he understood the gravity of his actions and was willing to accept his father's decree. "There's no need for such harsh punishment," the woodcutter protested gently. "The boy made a mistake, but he has already apologized." But old Peluto would not be swayed. "He must learn the consequences of his actions. He will work for you, and in doing so, he will learn responsibility and discipline." And so, with a heavy heart but a firm resolve, Pinko began his service to the woodcutter. From the very first day, he threw himself into the work with a vigor that surprised everyone. His once mischievous energy was now channeled into laborious tasks, and he was determined to prove his worth. As days turned into weeks, the woodcutter discovered something extraordinary about Pinko. Despite his young age, the boy possessed a strength that seemed almost superhuman. One morning, as the woodcutter watched in amazement, Pinko effortlessly plucked trees from the ground, roots and all, and carried them over his shoulder as if they were mere twigs. "Pinko!" the woodcutter exclaimed, his voice filled with awe. "How do you do it? You work harder and achieve more than any grown man I've ever known." Pinko, panting slightly but smiling with satisfaction, simply shrugged. "I don't know, sir. I just do what needs to be done." News of Pinko's incredible strength quickly spread throughout the village. People began to gather at the edge of the forest, eager to witness the boy who could clear an entire forest in a single day. The woodcutter's once modest reputation grew, thanks to Pinko's extraordinary abilities. One day, as the woodcutter and Pinko worked side by side, the woodcutter paused to watch the boy. Pinko was stacking logs into neat piles, each one higher and more perfect than the last. The woodcutter felt a swell of pride and affection for the boy who had become like a son to him. "Pinko," he said softly, "you have more than repaid your debt. You have brought so much good into our lives. You are like family to us now." Pinko looked up, his eyes shining with gratitude. "Thank you, sir. Your kindness and patience have taught me so much. I am happy to be here." As the months passed, Pinko continued to impress the villagers with his feats of strength. He gathered firewood in such abundance that even 20 oxen couldn't have hauled it all away. He cleared entire sections of the forest, making the land ready for new growth and prosperity. The woodcutter's wife, who had initially been wary of the boy, now welcomed him with open arms. She saw the change in Pinko, the way he had transformed from a mischievous child into a hard-working, responsible young man. Her heart swelled with maternal pride each time he accomplished another impossible task. One particularly cold winter, the village faced a dire shortage of firewood. The villagers, knowing of Pinko's strength, turned to the woodcutter for help. Without hesitation, Pinko set out into the frozen forest. For days he worked tirelessly, chopping and gathering wood, his breath visible in the frigid air. When he returned, his arms laden with more firewood than anyone had ever seen, the villagers cheered. They praised his strength and his generosity. For Pinko had not only saved them from the cold, but had also shown them the true meaning of community and service. The woodcutter, standing proudly beside Pinko, felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had not only gained a helper but had also watched a boy grow into a remarkable young man. The bond they shared was no longer just that of master and servant but of family. Years passed, and Pinko's service came to an end. On the last day of his 3-year term, he stood before the woodcutter and his wife, his heart heavy with mixed emotions. "I have served my time," he said, his voice steady but tinged with sadness. "I will be leaving in the morning." The woodcutter's wife, tears glistening in her eyes, embraced Pinko. "You will always have a home here," she whispered. "You are part of our family now." The woodcutter nodded, his eyes filled with pride. "You have done more than anyone could have asked, Pinko. You are like a son to us." Pinko, his own eyes brimming with tears, hugged them both. "Thank you for everything. I will never forget the kindness you have shown me." As dawn broke the next morning, Pinko packed his few belongings and prepared to leave. The woodcutter and his wife stood by, watching him with a mixture of pride and sorrow. Pinko turned to them one last time, his heart full of gratitude. "I will visit often," he promised, "and I will always carry your lessons with me." With that, he walked into the forest, his steps sure and strong. He left behind the small cottage where he had found redemption and a new sense of purpose, carrying with him the love and lessons that had transformed his life. The sun had barely risen over the village when a messenger arrived at the woodcutter's humble home. The man's chest heaved as he caught his breath, his eyes wide with urgency. "The Baron has summoned you and Pinko," he gasped. "He has a challenge that only you can fulfill." The woodcutter exchanged a puzzled glance with Pinko. "What could the Baron want with us?" he wondered aloud. "We'll find out soon enough," Pinko replied, his eyes gleaming with curiosity and determination. They quickly gathered their tools and followed the messenger to the Baron's grand estate. The Baron, a stern man with a reputation for setting near-impossible tasks, met them at the edge of his vast fields. His eyes scrutinized Pinko, the boy whose feats of strength had become the stuff of legends. "I hear you possess extraordinary abilities," the Baron said, his voice carrying a challenge. Pinko nodded, standing tall. "I do what I can, sir." The Baron gestured to the sprawling fields, covered in a tangle of weeds and untamed soil. "These fields must be plowed by sunset. If you succeed, you will be well rewarded. If not, you will never work in this village again." The woodcutter felt a pang of anxiety, but Pinko placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We can do this," he said firmly. Without wasting a moment, Pinko grabbed a plow and began his work. His hands moved with the speed and precision of a seasoned farmer, each stroke of the plow turning the soil with effortless strength. The woodcutter joined him, his heart swelling with pride and hope as he watched the boy who had become like a son to him. As the hours passed, the villagers gathered to witness the spectacle. They watched in awe as Pinko and the woodcutter transformed the chaotic fields into neat, furrowed rows. By the time the sun began to dip below the horizon, the fields were plowed to perfection. The Baron, unable to hide his astonishment, approached them. "You have exceeded my expectations," he admitted, his voice grudgingly respectful. "Your reward will be delivered to your home by morning." With the Baron's challenge behind them, Pinko and the woodcutter returned to their simple life. But their reputation had spread far and wide, reaching even the ears of the king. One day, another messenger arrived, this one bearing the royal crest. "The king has heard of your remarkable talents," the messenger announced. "He has a task that requires your unique abilities. You are to come to the palace at once." The woodcutter and Pinko set off for the palace, their hearts filled with a mix of excitement and trepidation. Upon their arrival, they were led to the grand hall where the king himself awaited. The king was a wise and just ruler, known for his fair judgment and kind heart. "I have heard tales of your incredible strength and skill," the king said, his eyes twinkling with curiosity. "I have a task that I believe only you can accomplish." He led them to a large granary, its floors covered in heaps of corn. This corn needs to be threshed and the grains separated by type. It is a task that would take my best workers weeks to complete. Can you do it? Pinko nodded confidently. I will do my best, Your Majesty. The king watched as Pinko began to work. With a speed and precision that seemed almost magical, Pinko threshed the corn, his hands moving in a blur. As he worked, he murmured softly, invoking a power that seemed to flow through him. The grains began to separate, each type forming its own neat pile. The woodcutter, standing by, could hardly believe his eyes. He had always known Pinko was special, but this was beyond anything he had imagined. Pinko's connection to the earth, his ability to coax nature into order, was nothing short of miraculous. As the task neared completion, the king's advisors gathered to witness the wonder. Their eyes widened in amazement as they saw the different grains perfectly sorted, the impossible task completed in mere hours. When Pinko finally stepped back, the king approached, his face alight with admiration. "You have done what I thought was impossible," he said. "You have not only served your village but have also proven that true strength lies in the heart and spirit." The woodcutter, overwhelmed with pride, stepped forward. "Your Majesty, Pinko is a gift to us all. His journey from mischief to greatness has been a blessing to our village and to all who know him." The king smiled warmly. "Indeed, he is a remarkable young man. For your incredible service, I grant you and the woodcutter a place of honor in my court. You will live here, with all the comforts and respect you deserve." Pinko bowed humbly, gratitude shining in his eyes. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I am honored to serve." As they settled into their new life at the palace, Pinko and the woodcutter never forgot their humble beginnings. They continued to work hard, their bond growing stronger with each passing day. The villagers, proud of their local heroes, often visited the palace to share in the joy and success of their beloved Pinko. Through it all, Pinko's extraordinary abilities and unwavering dedication remained an inspiration to all. He had shown that true greatness comes not from one's birth or circumstances but from the strength of character, the willingness to work hard, and the capacity for kindness and humility. And so, the legend of Pinko, the boy with the heart of gold and the strength of 100 men, lived on, a testament to the power of redemption and the magic that resides in every soul. The palace was abuzz with whispers of Pinko's latest task, each servant and courtier eager to see what the remarkable boy would do next. Pinko had just completed the king's challenge, separating grains with a precision that bordered on magical. His next request, however, left even the king momentarily speechless. Standing before the throne, Pinko held out a large piece of burlap. "Your Majesty," he said, "in gratitude for the work I have done, I ask that you fill this sack with grain as payment." The king raised an eyebrow, a smile tugging at his lips. "A sack of grain? Consider it done." But as Pinko unfurled the burlap, the audience gasped. The sack was enormous, stretching out across the floor like a giant tent. It was a feat of sewing and ingenuity, the likes of which the kingdom had never seen. "How do you expect us to fill such a giant sack?" the king asked, more curious than concerned. "With your generosity, Your Majesty," Pinko replied with a grin. "This sack represents not just my work, but the woodcutter's too. It is a token of our labor and loyalty to you." The king's eyes twinkled with admiration. "Very well, Pinko. Let it be filled." Over the next few days, grain from all over the kingdom was brought to the palace. The sack filled slowly, each kernel a testament to Pinko's incredible abilities and the woodcutter's hard work. Villagers gathered to watch, their faces beaming with pride. Pinko had become a symbol of hope and resilience, his journey from mischief maker to hero inspiring all who heard his story. When the sack was finally filled to the brim, it stood as tall as the palace gates. The king, impressed by the boy's cleverness and determination, decided that a sack of grain was not enough to reward Pinko's efforts. "Pinko," the king declared, "you have proven yourself worthy of more than just this grain. You and the woodcutter shall receive a lifetime supply of grain, wood, oxen, and gold. Your loyalty and service to this kingdom deserve the highest recognition." Tears of joy filled the woodcutter's eyes as he embraced Pinko. The villagers cheered, their voices echoing through the palace halls. The king's generosity ensured that neither Pinko nor the woodcutter would ever want for anything again. As the days turned into weeks, Pinko's service to the king came to an end. It was time for him to return home. The woodcutter and Pinko packed their belongings, the bounty they had received piled high on their carts. The journey back to their village was a triumphant one, the roads lined with people who had come to see them off. When they finally arrived home, Pinko's family was waiting. His mother, tears streaming down her face, hugged him tightly. "I always knew you had greatness in you," she whispered. Pinko smiled, looking around at the humble home he had missed so much. The fields, now abundant with grain, the stacks of wood, and the sturdy oxen were all reminders of his journey and the rewards of his hard work. As the years passed, Pinko and the woodcutter lived comfortably, their lives filled with the peace and contentment that comes from knowing one's efforts have been recognized and rewarded. Pinko's feats became legends, stories told around fires and in the quiet of the night. He had become more than a hero. He was a symbol of hope and perseverance. Every now and then, Pinko would look at the massive sack, now a treasured keepsake, and remember the days of hard work and the journey that had brought him and the woodcutter to this moment. His life had come full circle, from a mischievous boy stealing corn cakes to a revered figure who had won the respect and admiration of a king. And so, in their quiet village, amidst fields of golden grain and the laughter of family and friends, Pinko and the woodcutter lived out their days in happiness. The tale of Pinko's transformation and the rewards of his labor were passed down through generations, a testament to the power of hard work, ingenuity, and the strength of the human spirit.